and welcome to another Arsecast Extra, as always, with James from Gunnerblog. James, a very goodly afternoon to you.
Goodly afternoon, Andrew. How you doing?
I am okay. I'm back home. I'm in Dublin. My voice is a little bit worse for wear. Some might say that's because there was a lot of talking this weekend, a lot of talking to people at Elliot's shindig on Friday night, a lot of talking to people on Saturday night when we had our event at Union Chapel, and I'm sure we'll discuss that in a moment. But the reality is, my voice went when that little scuffle happened at the end of the game, remember? When Dan Byrne got involved, and for whatever reason, I just decided to kill him! Just kill him! And I think I did myself some damage there.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Look, our voices all went through lots of exertions this weekend.
Mm.
I mean, none more so than Clive, of course, during the live event, whose falsetto singing was really something to
oh my
behold.
goodness, that was amazing.
But listen, people have that to come, right? There's treats on the horizon when that's being released, right? The Union Chapel episode.
It will be released. It's probably going to be on YouTube a bit later on, and we will do an audio version as well. You can catch it, on our feeds, and I'm sure Elliot will put it out on the Arsecast. Jesus, I am a bit tired. The Arsenal Vision feeds as well. So yeah, we will be able to share what a great night that was at Union Chapel in those moments. If people haven't seen it yet, Clive joining in the singing at Mikel Arteta kind of forgot that he was mic'd up. You know, it was like that scene from Naked Gun when Leslie Nielsen is at the reception for the Queen and he forgets to take his microphone off, and you can just hear him going to the bathroom. I think that's adjacent to that, is it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's been a busy weekend, but a great weekend. And nice to meet so many listeners as well, see so many listeners who came out for the live show.
Amazing as always. Yeah, it really is a great pleasure to be able to say hi and put faces to names and then sort of forget all the names, because there are just too many names for us.
There are.
You know, there's only 6 names that they have to remember, but we have to remember dozens, if not hundreds of names. But it is always brilliant to see people, and you know, we should take a moment to thank them for coming out and for their continued support, not just for the Union Chapel event, but for being with us throughout the season. Sometimes it's a difficult season. Sometimes it's not so difficult. I think this one has been a little bit difficult. Sort of like when we get to the end of an episode and we go like, nobody's got to the end of this one. It's sort of, that's that kind of season, right?
Right. The listenership's just sort of dwindled over the course of the campaign.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's just me and you talking to ourselves at this point in time.
That's okay. Okay.
And Mikel Arteta, Andrew. You were stood so close to Mikel Arteta.
I was.
Absolutely extraordinary, really.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that? Your instant reaction? How does he smell? What is the scent of Mikel?
I will say to people that I got no discernible odor from Mikel Arteta.
Okay.
If people were expecting him to smell of rose water or something like that, it wasn't there. It wasn't there. Completely neutral, but it could have also been my sort of nervousness or whatever it was when he came on stage. Maybe my senses were just hyper focused on not saying something really fucking stupid on stage in front of the Arsenal manager, and everything else kind of shut down. I feel like I went a bit blind, so maybe that's what it is. I couldn't smell anything.
Fair enough. It was a big moment. So, listen, I can understand smell not being at the forefront of your mind at that particular point in time. But very cool that he did come down, and a nice surprise for everyone.
Yes, it was. I mean, it was very last minute. We had a lot of questions, which we obviously can't get into, about like how did it happen, et cetera, et cetera. But what I would say is that there was, an opportunity for the manager of Arsenal Football Club to come and show his gratitude to a collection of Arsenal fans, a room full of Arsenal fans who were a big part of the fundraiser that Elliot and Arsenal Vision drive every year, and that we're really, really happy to support and donate to as well, that has generated a huge amount of money for the Arsenal Foundation. And he is somebody, I think, who has talked and does talk often, doesn't he, about connection and the connection between fans and the club, and fans and the club and fans. And, I think this was probably not something he's used to. Like, I did wonder, did he kind of go, what the fuck am I walking into here? I did wonder about that a little bit.
Some sort of convention for bald men. Yeah, I'm sure he was prepped. I'm sure a dossier was produced. You know how exacting he is about preparation and research. But even so, it was, I think, an unusual situation for him to walk into, and he got an amazing reception.
Yeah, he really did.
So I think that will have caught him slightly off guard, to be honest. But it was a very cool thing, and brilliant recognition for the amazing fundraising that's been done, not just this year, but over the last few years, and also just a nice moment for him, I think, with the fans at the end of, as you say, a difficult campaign, and a moment that was kind of echoed at full time after Newcastle, when the squad came back onto the field and Mikel Arteta got on the mic and spoke about that dream that he has of bringing major silverware back to Arsenal, and how important it is that the supporters help kind of kindle that fire and keep it alive. Sure,
I have a bit of audio from that, which I'll play in a little while, and maybe we can talk about that. But a really, really great moment. It was just lovely to hear that reception and to see the enthusiasm of the crowd that were there, because I don't think many people believed us when we said that was what was going to happen. When Elliot introduced him, people were they were saying to me afterwards, no, it's a joke. We all thought you were joking. We thought James was going to go behind the signs at the back and come out in a wig.
A lot of people thought that's what was going to happen.
I mean, that's not beyond the realms of possibility either.
Maybe next year, guys. Maybe next year.
We don't quite know what we're going to do in terms of a special guest in that sense. And look, it was brilliant and also quite nerve-wracking. I think I said on stage, I was standing there, my leg was shaking, because I really did not want to say anything stupid or the wrong thing in that moment where, he might give me that look, and I'd be like, oh, crap. Didn't do that on stage, but I think I just about got away with it. It was great, and just a great moment, for us as Arsenal fans as well. We're lucky to be able to do what we do, but at the heart of it, we are Arsenal fans, and we want the club to do really well, and to have that kind of an interaction with the manager of the club, I think was great.
It's crazy. I mean, if you told us that a few years ago that would happen. In those circumstances, I'm not sure we would have necessarily believed you. And I think it's great that it's great for Mikel to do it, but great that the club as well recognised this community and this audience, and were prepared to kind of put Mikel in a situation that was a little bit off the beaten media track, as it were. And I think that's really encouraging and really, really positive.
Yes. And then, sometimes something is just as simple as showing gratitude and appreciation for something else. And the manager showing appreciation for the fundraiser, and the club helping to facilitate that, because they appreciate the work that goes into it, and the generosity as well of so many people who listen to this podcast and to the Arsenal Vision podcast, who put their hands in their pocket year after year after year and generate a huge amount of money that does so much good for the work that the Arsenal Foundation does. So it doesn't need to be anything more than that, because that in itself is enough.
Absolutely. Agree. Although we should have probably have asked him which striker he's buying.
I mean, I'd have got run out of town, I think.
The death stare would have been turned on.
The death stare would have been turned on. And you did not see the size of the security guy. I don't know if you did see the size of the security guy.
I did, actually.
Right,
yeah.
So, yeah.
He told us backstage, though, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. We can't tell anyone, though.
No, it's a real shame. Can't let anyone know.
Top secret information. We know everything. We know all the players are going to sign and who's leaving and all of it.
Do you think Mikel will have gotten a taste for the podcast experience? Do you think, like, next week he's going to launch Arteta Cast and he's going to spend his summer? He's like, actually, I loved it. I really loved it. I'm going to do more of this.
Yeah, one day I want to, play Union Chapel.
Yeah.
The Artcast. We might have to get the lawyers on. I don't know.
Might have to.
I do wonder, as I said to you, I did wonder, did he have any concept of what exactly it was he was going to be walking into? If you say it's like it's a sort of a church and it's full of Arsenal fans. Okay, and there's going to be some bald guys and, some not bald guys, to be fair, to the ones who still have hair. They'll be on stage. Yeah, maybe he will.
Critiquing the tactical approach despite being completely unqualified.
Well, we got to the heart of it, which is essentially kick the ball really hard into the goal. That was the heart of the tactical discussion that we had
this season.
Saturday night.
The analysis of this season was we got fucked. The analysis of what we need to do better, kick the ball really hard. That's the long and the short of it.
Well, he did say afterwards that was a big part of his plans for the summer when he was telling us all the players he's going to sign and stuff. So
Exactly.
So look, an amazing night and an amazing experience. It will be available for people on YouTube. Keep an eye on social media. I'll post it up there, of course, when it is available, or you can just check the Arseblog YouTube channel. Do I have to tell them to subscribe? What's the thing? Dance and subscribe? No.
Yeah.
Like and subscribe. People can dance and subscribe if they want as well.
Yeah, like and subscribe first, and then if you've got time, do the dancing maybe.
Do the dancing and the subscribing. So there was a game, obviously, as well this weekend.
Yeah, big game.
A big game, in the very narrow context of the last couple of weeks of the season, I think. We have to put it that way. But it meant, obviously, that we finished second, beating Newcastle 1-0. Newcastle could have gone above us. I think that was a really important thing to avoid.
Yeah. So you don't see the 10-goal swing going Man City's way then? You're confident to say seconds in the bag?
Pretty much. I can't imagine that size of a goal swing.
It would be a really bad thing if it happened. I think we'll be okay. What we can say for sure is we've got the Champions League place 100% ratified, which was obviously critically important. And yeah, when I look at the teams beneath us, third to seventh are within a point of each other. I'm very glad to not be in that scrap on the final day.
Yeah.
Particularly going to a ground where, as bad as Southampton have been this season, our record is not necessarily the best. I've got some bad memories of Southampton.
Yes, and it does look as if we're going to have some players perhaps missing from that game.
Yeah,
because of the injury situation. It's not really getting any better. I just can't really see Southampton scoring 10.
No, fair enough. I mean, I feel pretty comfortable too. But even so, I'm just delighted that, we got the 3 points that we needed to sort of really take the pressure off next week.
There was, I think, and my voice is really going here. I'm sorry, folks, but
it's all Dan Burns' fault, guys.
Yeah, exactly. Well, to be fair, I was also shouting a little bit at the Newcastle fans who were right below where I was sitting on Sunday. They were having a good time in the sunshine. My favourite bit, by the way, was Gunnersaurus was walking down around that side of the pitch, and all the Newcastle fans were, giving him 2 fingers. Wah, fucking dinosaur. I don't know what they were saying. I couldn't really hear him. They're probably, fucking green twat. And Gunnersaurus was doing like this sort of, as he got to the Newcastle fans, he stopped walking and then started strutting. That's the only way I can describe it. A bit like John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever. When he's walking down the street, throws his jacket over his shoulder. Gunnersaurus is doing this, and they're all like, look at your tail, you wanker, fucking dinosaur. And just as he gets to the corner of the pitch, Gunnosaurus stopped, turned, and just sort of bent down and went and waggled his tail or arse at them and continued on. And to be fair to them, a couple of them applauded that.
How could you not? Effectively being mooned by a dinosaur.
They were dishing it out, and to be fair, a few of them were prepared to take a bit back. So
that's good. He's better at winding people up than he is at saving penalties. I think we can say that.
Is he better than David Raya at saving penalties? That is.
Depends which David Raya. He's probably better than the one we saw in the FA Cup against United. Yes. Yeah. But this was a good day for David Raya, largely, and it needed to be, right? Because the first half was, I was pretty worried.
Yeah, me too. It was not good. It lacked energy. It lacked a bit of fight, didn't it? And I think for perhaps understandable reasons, this is a squad I think that is pretty much running on empty. Some of them anyway. There are a few in particular who I noticed during this game were really, really struggling physically. But the first half was not quite there in terms of the, I don't want to say the attitude, but we were a bit easy to play through.
The intensity, I think.
The intensity wasn't quite there. And you mentioned David Raya obviously making some saves. He also made things a bit hard work, didn't he? Because as good as he was with the saves, it was like, he'd been out till 3 a.m. or something the night before.
Yeah, I mean, that's really crept in over the last few weeks for him. And he's usually pretty reliable or consistent with the ball at his feet. So it's been a little bit surprising to me how frequently he's given it away.
What do you put that down to? Do you think it could be just sort of mental fatigue at the far end of a season? He really has played a lot. Like, he's basically played every game, hasn't he? Apart from the one where we had to play a child in goal.
Yeah, Jack Porter played in the Carabao, and then the one where we played Neto when he tried to save the ball 40 yards from his own goal. Yeah.
Apart from that, I think he's played every minute of every game, more or less. 37 games in the Premier League. 4,890 minutes so far for Arsenal this season. That's a lot of minutes, even if you are just the kind of, I was going to say the guy who stands between the sticks, but he doesn't even do that. He plays high up the pitch, and he must cover some ground. I wonder which goalkeeper has covered the most ground in terms of kilometres this season. Opta, please help.
Opta will help us out. I mean, it could be that, a bit of mental fatigue. I also think the players he's passing the ball into, I think, have just lost a bit of edge as well. We spoke a bit about Marino at Anfield, didn't he? Like receiving a pass at a point in a game where he's absolutely knackered. I just think maybe that sharpness in, say, a Thomas Partey isn't quite there at this point in the season, where you can normally fizz a ball into him and he'll bring it under his spell and spin around a bloke. This is just not happening right now. And I think that slightly ragged feel that the team has as we enter this final period of the season might be impacting, how we play out and how successful we are with that. But he kept himself busy, I think is a good way to put it. His errors on the ball afforded him the chance to make some really, really impressive saves.
There were like a couple of moments for Arsenal, weren't there, in the first half? There was a header which was well saved. I think it was Thomas Partey with a header from a corner, and Nick Pope just sort of did the I'm going to make myself big thing, and it hit him, and it went over the bar. And then there was Trossard. I can't remember if Trossard was before or after that, where he had a shot that deflected wide. But basically, by half-time, I think Newcastle, let's say if they'd had Alexander Isak, would probably have been ahead in this game.
Well, that was a big thing, when the team news came out, Isak wasn't there. And if he was, Callum Wilson looks, some way short of the player he once was. He's obviously had a lot of injury problems, not the most mobile, I think, anymore. And they did just lack that cutting edge, because there was a few moments where they fizzed across the box, but there was no one there to stab it in, or chances fell the way of players who couldn't beat Raya. we know how devastating Isak can be. He's done it to us more than once already this season. So I think that might have made the difference. And had he been on the pitch, Newcastle could have had that game almost won, really. If they'd been a goal or two up at half time, I don't think Arsenal could have had too many complaints.
No, I agree. There was a save, wasn't there? Harvey Barnes just sort of ran through the middle of the pitch and nobody got anywhere near him. That was too easy. That was sort of indicative of the problem I think Arsenal had in that first half, competing physically with Newcastle. And that shot, I think, took a deflection. And then I because it was up the other end for me, I didn't realise how good the double save was from a corner.
Yeah, from Burn and Botman, I think.
Yeah, like the one from Burn is such a good save, and then the one from Botman, he just sort of sticks out a foot as it's going the other way. But those are really, really good saves from David Raya.
Yeah, he was a real difference maker in this game, as he has been more than once this season. We've said many times he's got a case to be the player of the year, even if there has been that slight inconsistency in distribution that's crept in. But yeah, he really kept us level in the game. They were just playing through us much too easily. It felt like in the wide areas they had the better of us. I thought, Ben White, we know he's not been at his sharpest, at his best. I thought he struggled in the first half with Anthony Gordon running in behind him. Newcastle are a really physical team, and there are so few teams in this league who can live with Arsenal in that respect, who are, as powerful, as strong. And Newcastle are one of those. And in fact, without a Marino, without a Havertz, we were struggling to hold the ball at the other end too. It's Trossard up against three giant centre-backs for Newcastle.
And we kept kicking it to him. We kept sort of...
Somewhat optimistically.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think he did okay a couple of times. And actually, I thought Trossard in that first half, along with Kivior, was probably the most lively Arsenal player. I think he did pretty well, all things considered. But yeah, that constant, well, here you go, 5'9", 5'8", Trossard up against 6'10", whatever he is, Dan Burn and those guys. I mean, they're a big team, Newcastle. That was pretty evident.
Yeah, they are. And, even players who've been in really fabulous form recently, like Declan Rice, I think you barely saw him in the first half. He wasn't particularly in the game. He had a lot to say about it in the second half. Don't worry about that. But I just thought it was really hard going, actually. And to, Livramento had that chance where he got played in as well. It just seemed too easy for Newcastle at times. But they didn't have that cutting edge. So it was nice to be on the other end of that for a while, I suppose. I did sort of look at it and think they've had the kind of spell where you feel, I know I've watched Arsenal have those spells and felt like you have to score then. You have to take advantage. You have to get that lead. They didn't do that. And you always hoped that would enable us to improve and to turn it around.
Okay, were you confident that we could improve and turn it around?
Not especially, I have to say.
No. I mean, I know we saw it at Liverpool, but I just was looking at Declan Rice, for example, and he didn't look 100% fit or 100% at his physical peak. And I just wondered how they were going to dig deep again, because obviously the manager had words of encouragement for them at Anfield last week. But you can only turn the hairdryer on every so often, can't you? You can't do it every week because then it just loses its impact. I think you can try and put things right tactically, and you can identify some things that Arsenal didn't do well in that first half, which I think we started doing in the second half. We did compete better physically, and I think that was part of the turnaround last week at Anfield too. But I just wonder... Yeah, I wasn't confident that we were going to be able to do it again or figure out exactly where a goal was going to come from. But I think you could see pretty quickly into the second half that we were a bit more at the races.
Yeah, I mean, don't forget as well, at half-time we lost William Saliba.
Yes, so, that was worrying.
Yeah, that was another sort of component that made you think, this is going to be hard work. But actually, bringing Calafiori on, and he went into left centre back, didn't he? And Kivior switched over to the right hand side, and I felt almost immediately Calafiori brought something different.
I fucking did, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's not that I give him credit for completely inspiring an improved second half performance, but I just felt it lent another dynamic to our game, and maybe something a bit more proactive. I don't know. In a funny sort of way, I think it helped us.
Well, yeah, I would agree with that. I was sitting with Paul from Arsenal Vision. We were watching the game, and we were just sort of laughing about the first 5-6 minutes of the second half. When Calafiori came on, I think we got like a corner or a free kick or something up the other end, and he went up for that. And then he basically stayed up there for about 3 or 4 minutes. Even though the ball had come back to Kivior at one point, he was like the only centre half. And Calafiori was like, I'm going to be a left winger for a bit. I'm going to be an inside right for a bit. I'll duck into centre forward here and see what happens. It was sort of slightly chaotic, but enjoyable in a way, because it was maybe something that we were missing a bit. If you change the structure, or if you make the opposition go, what the fuck is happening here? Why is the central defender here doing this, that, and the other? Maybe it unsettles them a bit.
I mean, so much of the sort of chess match of football is about creating that extra man. And Calafiori enables you to have an extra man in all sorts of zones of the pitch that the opponent can't necessarily anticipate. I mean, there's definitely a risk that comes with it, particularly against a team who break as well as Newcastle. But I think playing up against a back three, as we were, it's no great surprise given the success Newcastle had against us with that formation previously. They used it last week at Chelsea as well too, to good effect. It just brought that sort of chaos that I think at times this season we've been crying out for.
Sorry, I'm just catching my breath there because I was just thinking of Calafiori rampaging up and down the left. It was just a lot of fun in a weird way. Like ideally, is that what you want to see? No, but like in this circumstance, in this context, maybe you just need to, I don't know, take what's the Italian for handbrake? You need to take that off a bit,
Absolutely.
I mean, the goal came pretty quickly, didn't it, into the second half, about 10 minutes in. Anthony Gordon lost the ball. Bukayo Saka played Odegaard. Odegaard cut it back for Rice. Nice vision, I think, from Odegaard, because when you see that reverse angle of it, he's got some bodies in the way to find Rice. And what a finish. What an absolutely brilliant finish that is. Nick Pope is a big guy. But just the power and the trajectory and the spin of that ball, he doesn't get anywhere near it. It's a really good finish from Declan Rice.
Oh, great strike. I mean, we know all about his ball striking ability. He showed that against Real Madrid, but it's really, really beautifully struck. He sort of cuts across the ball and sends it arcing away into the far corner. Fantastic. And again, a kind of individual moment. We haven't had a ton of goals like that, which have been sort of not necessarily even just a long distance shot, but somebody genuinely creating something almost out of nothing. And Rice did then. And I think I'm right in saying it was his 9th goal of the season.
9 goals and 10 assists. And, what did he do? He kicked the ball really hard into the back of the net.
Yeah. Well, the notes Mikel took back from the live podcast paying dividends there.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, look, it sort of we had a better start to the second half, and there'd been a bit of a goalmouth scramble off a corner, and we'd looked a little bit more active, engaged. There was the Calafiori element as well. But that goal, is huge and has a massive impact on the game. At 0-0, the first goal was so critical there, and Rice stepped up and got it, and it made a world of difference to us. Yeah,
it did, and maybe we could have had a second Ben White.
Yeah,
with a shot that was really not that far away.
No,
Newcastle made some changes. I don't think it made any big difference to them, to be honest. They looked tired. There's my dog going mental. Can you hear her going mad?
I can.
Yeah.
Do we know why?
I believe she might be going out for a walk. So she gets quite excited.
Okay.
That's Lana going for a walk. Anyway, it was weird because I think the goal took a bit of the wind out of Newcastle sails a bit. Definitely. Because there wasn't a lot going on in that second half, really. The Ben White chance we talked about. I know the last 10 or 12 minutes got a bit weird and tetchy and everything else, but we didn't feel under any great pressure from Newcastle.
No, and I do just feel like they were missing something in attack, without Isak there. Even the subs they brought on, did make a great deal of difference. Joe Willock went relatively close, didn't he? Yeah. That wasn't far away, near post. Inside the last 10 minutes, he took the shot on, I think, with his left foot inside the box, and I don't know if it's narrowly high and wide, but it wasn't far off at all. And then, late on, bit of drama, a couple of corners. Nick Pope came up, didn't he?
Yeah. Do you see the bit when Martinelli just had Dan Burn to hold off or beat on the halfway line? He lost the ball and fell over, and I think that's where they got the corner from, which ended in the scuffle. And Declan Rice is like giving out shit to Martinelli in there. There were just things like that, where moments in that final 5 minutes where I felt we could have been just a bit more sensible with the ball, particularly when there was a referee who was quite willing to let things go. There were some free kicks that we did not get, that the people around me were very, very unhappy that we didn't get those free kicks, partly because they thought they were free kicks, but partly because, there was a sort of fear in conceding late to Newcastle by getting caught on the ball high up the pitch when maybe we could have just taken it to the corner a couple of times.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And, I slightly got sucked into that fear too in those final moments, I will admit. By the way, we should touch on some of the substitutions because they were significant. I mean, obviously Kai Havertz coming back on.
Yes. Yeah.
After his physical transformation. Still looked quite a lot like Kai Havertz to me. Same, but we didn't get up close and personal, so maybe that's true. Maybe there is something going on there. Kieran Tierney and Jorginho. Exactly, Tierney and Jorginho. I mean, Mikel Arteta is not really a sentimental man, so I'm sure those were primarily tactical changes, but probably, in fact, certainly, last Emirates Stadium appearances for those guys. Yeah, I think they were quite deliberate. To give them a final run out on the last chance that they have to play. I've actually got a question about Tierney, I think, for part 2, so we can maybe hold it on there. There was, like you say, that scuffle. I had no idea what was happening. No, they were checking something, weren't they? And eventually they just blew for full time. Yeah, I still don't know what they were checking for. My sense was that I didn't really see an Arsenal player do anything wrong, so I was thinking it might have been a red card for Dan Burn for doing something. I can't imagine it was a penalty that they were checking for, because we did see like one replay in the press box, and I imagine they were just checking for potential, violent conduct or something. But there didn't seem to be a great deal in it, and I think the referee absolutely did the right thing by saying we've had quite enough of this. Yes. 1-0 to the Arsenal. 1-0 to the Arsenal. Mikel Arteta was booked, wasn't he? Yes, for kicking the third time this season, I believe. Kicking the ball onto the pitch. Do you think he knew what he was doing there? Do you think it was a genuine attempt to kick the ball back to a Newcastle player? Or do you think he was kind of just trying to delay things a bit? I actually haven't seen it back, so I don't know. Why? Do you have a strong view on it? Not really a strong view, but it's a sort of left-footed pass down the line. I think he's just trying to... He's quite precise, So I don't know. But he is suspended now. It sort of feels fitting that we should bookend our season with people being booked for kicking the ball away, Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, the ball goes out. Here it is. It lands to him. I think he's just sort of... You just don't know with Mikel Arteta, I guess. I mean, listen, we watched a lot of Mikel Arteta. He wasn't a left foot specialist by any means. So I actually think it's a fairly genuine attempt to sort of knock the ball back. But we'll never know. I mean, and it means no Mikel Arteta on the bench at Southampton. Again, another reason that I'm sort of relieved that we don't go there with anything particularly at stake.
Yes, yes. That's fair enough. Yeah,
so hopefully it'll just be a sort of nice day out on the south coast.
Hopefully so. And look, it was important, to get back to winning ways a bit as well, because we haven't won for a while. So get those 3 points under our belts, keep Newcastle at, if not arm's length, stump's length. Can you say that?
Yeah.
Don't know where that came from. I'm really sorry. I'm tired.
It was important. And, people have different views, don't they, on the whole finishing second thing. But I think it is a mark of consistency as well as it is a mark of frustration.
Yes, you can be frustrated, but I'd rather finish second than third. I know it doesn't make a world of difference. I just feel like after the last few weeks that we needed to win this game. Getting overtaken by Newcastle would have just been quite annoying, particularly because their fans were really annoying on Sunday too. So I wouldn't have enjoyed them being happy as it was. I was, hoping all their buses broke down on the way home and stuff while taking 3 points. So I just think for the team as well, they needed to win this game. And then afterwards there was the lap of appreciation, if you want to call it that, some goodbyes, some waves from certain players, and some words from the manager on the pitch, which I'm going to play now. I mean, we talked very briefly when we were at Union Chapel and when he was on stage at Union Chapel about sending a message. What message would you send to supporters? And I think in this clip, he's sending a message not only to the supporters, but to the players as well. So I'll just play this and then I'll ask you what you think.
What I said before, we have to start to create our own history here in this stadium. We certainly have started this season. There's much more to come. We have to do it all together. It's not going to be easy, but this group of players, I'm telling you, they have the hunger, they have the quality, they have the talent, and we're going to make it happen.
How much are you looking forward to working in the summer so that we can come back in August, raising our levels again?
Yeah, we need to reset first. We need to finish winning at Southampton and then go on holidays. But before we do that, please, because I know what these players have been through, this staff this season. Any other club in this position will finish in a position that we cannot even dream of. So please say thank you to the players, say thank you to the staff, and thank you to all of you for your support.
His voice sounds worse than mine, actually.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the moment on the day, like it wasn't really clear whether his voice was just sort of worn out, basically, by 90 minutes of screaming, or if there was a bit of emotion in there too, But I think listening to that recording, it sounds more like the former than the latter, to be honest.
I think so. I think he's obviously been shouting a lot from the sidelines, as you do, and then you have to talk into those microphones, and it's a difficult thing to do. But the message clearly was to his players when he says, out loud, these players have the talent and the quality and the desire to make it happen and to win trophies. But then there's the message to the fans as well about the adversity that the team has faced, which I think has been a consistent message over the last number of weeks. And I don't just mean when things have gone, in inverted commas, wrong. I think that has been part of his messaging throughout the season. The point that he made there, which maybe was a little obfuscated by the words that he used, where he says, if this happened to another team, they'd be in a position we couldn't even dream of. I think maybe the word nightmare might be more appropriate in that sense, because that's what he's trying to say. It's like if another team suffered all these injuries, all these red cards, all the challenges, they would not be finishing in second place. That is the clear message that I think he's trying to send.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you agree with that?
I don't know, actually. I don't know. Like, it's a total hypothetical, I think. So it's really hard to say. I think what I can say is that I think that the team and he have done a good job. When you consider what they've been up against, I think as a sort of coaching story, getting what is possible out of this group of players, I think it's a success. I'm kind of less interested in like what another club might or might not do in a similar situation.
Sure.
No?
Yeah, it's just because that is how he's framing it, you know?
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think you could probably make a case that if Liverpool had Salah out for 3-4 months, had whoever, like Luis Diaz out for 3-4 months, and they missed either one of Konate or Van Dijk, you know, in the same way that we've missed Gabriel, and you could probably make a good case that they would have had a less successful season. But I think it is more about how you get what you can out of the players that you have. And we have struggled at times this season because I think the squad has been too short. And that's something he has said himself as well, isn't it? The squad is too short, that the reasons for that are, I'm not even sure, open for debate. The injuries have played a big part in that, but have we then also left ourselves a little bit short because of transfer window stuff? You know, those are discussions that we've had over the course of this season as well. So I think it really is like, is your glass half full or your glass half empty as to how you view the achievement, in inverted commas, of finishing second?
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, I think if we were to say, "Oh, they've done well to finish second," like I don't think we'd be speaking for everyone in that. You know, I think there's certainly frustration and disappointment out there about that. But that's my assessment. I think it's a sort of, I think given what the club have endured over the course of the campaign, I think it's a respectable outcome. Even if it's not the outcome that any of us would want. No, that's for sure. Did you notice anything from the on-pitch waving? I noticed that, I did write about this on Blue Sky, but when Arteta was doing his address, Gunnosaurus was stood quite far away from the rest of the group. Just seemed to be a little bit somber, have his head bowed slightly. So, I don't know, guys. It might be one to watch in the window. Gunnosaurus to Real Madrid. They can't get Saliba, so they're going for the next best thing. Is that what you're saying? Could it be time to cash in? He is several million years old, I guess. You know, do we want to give him another contract? The age curve eventually is going to catch up with this prehistoric creature. No, I did notice, by the way, that... I don't know if you saw this, but there was a load of kids who came onto the pitch and had a little training session or kick around. Like not kids of players, but there was like a group of like 15 under nines. Or something. Oh yeah, they were introduced at halftime. Right. Yeah, the under nines were introduced at halftime. They all had the number 9 on their shirt, and I was like, wow, we're leaving no stone unturned in our search for the answer to our striking issue here. That this was the trial, I guess. One of those guys gets a contract for next season with the club. Yes. Well, you know. Was I noticing anything else? Not really. I mean, you know, there was kind of the obvious ones, right? Kieran Tierney off, Jorginho off, Neto and Sterling, I think we can assume off. Did you spot anything beyond that? I mean, obviously, Alexander Zinchenko is one that my eyes kept drifting towards. You know, he had his kids out on the pitch, and I was thinking, is it a bit of a farewell for him, potentially? Yeah, maybe. He did reference that, didn't he? Arteta, about, like, we've got players who are at the end of their contracts and we need to replace them, and, you know, some players, the loan players leaving. So he did... He did say that, but no, it's hard, isn't it? Because, you know, one person's wave of thank you very much for your support this season is another person's, he's waving goodbye. He's going to pick up his suitcase and head down the road. So I don't know, but look, I think it is going to be a pretty busy summer. It has to be. Mm-hmm. It has to be. There's much to be done.
Much to be done, yeah. We probably have some questions on that, don't we?
And it's interesting, like Mikel's been very focused on this idea of like, I don't want to look forward. I don't want to talk about the end of the season. We've got 2 big games to come. And I think having beaten Newcastle and with Champions League in the bag and second place, shall we say, all but confirmed, it was interesting that his post-match press conference was much more forward-looking.
Yes.
And talking about the summer, the players leaving you mentioned, but also some really interesting stuff, kind of knocking the ball into the court of the club hierarchy, I think. Saying, it's up to the guys upstairs, effectively.
Yes.
Andrea Berta was downstairs by that point. He was also pitch side for those sort of end of season ceremonies. But I thought that was interesting too. So clearly, as a club, I think even Mikel now can't resist but look to next season. I think we've probably all been doing it for a little while now. But I think, that's where his focus, I think, is beginning to shift to.
There was a message from Josh Kroenke as well, which came out after the game. We plan to invest to get behind winning and doing better next season.
It's in the programme notes.
It's there. And we've got questions about it, so maybe we should just take a little break here and do the questions. What do you think?
Sounds good.
All right. I will gargle some honey and lemon and come back with your questions and more in part 2 right after this. Welcome back to the Arsecast Extra. This is part 2 of the show where we answer the questions that you sent to us on Blue Sky at gunnerblog.bsky.social and at arseblog.com. Also on the Arseblog Discord the Discord thing, which you get access to.
And the Discord thing, of course.
The Discord thing. And you can get on the Discord thing if you're an Arseblog member on Patreon. That's how you get on the Discord thing. So I did want to ask you this question first, because there is all this talk about transfers and we all are very invested in what's going to happen this summer. And I have to say, even if this season has been quite frustrating and felt like a slog, I am excited for what we're going to do this summer. Perhaps naively, perhaps I'm an idiot, but I am excited. Primarily because I think there is a lot of talk about it, and what Mikel Arteta said yesterday and what Josh Kroenke said in his message, you're not in any doubt as to the fact that they know what needs to be done, right?
Absolutely.
So bearing that in mind, Ben Stewart Film, who's at Ben Stewart Film, .bsky.social. I don't know if he's a guy who films or if there is a film about Ben Stewart. I'm not sure.
Ben Stewart, the movie.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to part 2, the sequel. Ben Stewart's. Anyway, he says, with all this talk of a big summer from the Kroenkes and Arteta, do you think expectations can be met? We heard similar sentiments last summer. Not necessarily sure I agree that they were quite as forthright last summer. And I think it's fair to say we were severely let down. Are you expecting the club to follow through?
Severely let down.
I don't think I necessarily agree with severely let down with regards to the summer, but certainly I can understand people might feel severely let down by the nothing in January.
That is for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm not sure how many people felt severely let down kind of 1st of September, if that makes any sense. I think sort of we kind of discovered that our summer transfer window was inadequate, but I'm not sure how many people necessarily knew it at the time. I actually felt it at the time, but I think it was sort of not necessarily a widely held view, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Are they going to? Well, I think there is a certain clarity about it now. It's sort of obvious that we need recruitment, and I think quite obvious that we need goals and threat in attacking areas. The club, the manager, the owner are all saying the right things. And I think putting those things on record provides a certain degree of kind of accountability. Ultimately, like I wrote a thing towards the end of last season where it was like, there was this phrase which was like, and Arsenal were aware that, they maybe lacked a bit of attacking X factor against Bayern Munich.
Yeah.
And I've seen that screen grabbed and quoted and posted on Twitter and Reddit and everywhere forever. But ultimately, it was true, but it was my article. Whereas now it's like the club have said, in print, it's there from the owner, it's there from the manager, that there's an awareness of what needs to be done. So I can only think that they would only do that if they really felt they would be able to deliver against it, because otherwise you are setting yourself up for, frankly, a barrage of criticism.
Yeah, I mean, I think the word expectations is really interesting here. Not that
Depends on your expectations.
Yeah. I mean, it's doing a bit of heavy lifting. Like if your expectation is, a striker and a winger and a this and a that and the other and the other and the other and the other, maybe it won't be. But I think what it is essentially is about addressing the key issue, the core issue, isn't it? And that's goals and attack. And that feels to me like the one where if they don't quite deliver, that's where people's expectations they'll feel severely let down, I think.
I think that's fair, yeah. I think if you're hoping, because obviously we know Arsenal are, barring some sort of administrative disaster, going to get Zubimendi. But I think if your expectations are that on top of that, they need to sign a creative number 8, a winger, and a centre forward, I think there's a chance you'll be disappointed. You know what I mean? In most of the scenarios I play through in my mind, I'm not sure I see all of that happening.
I think you said on Saturday night that maybe it might be 2 of those 3. I mean, it's not even set in stone that they want a striker, winger, and a creative midfielder, right? I think if you were to ask me or you, and probably a lot of people listening, would you like Arsenal to do a striker, a winger, and a creative midfielder? I don't know that there'd be many people who would turn that down.
Yeah. All I was saying was, I think in the probability of how windows actually work and how much you're able to get done in one summer, and the fact that on top of that, we probably need a goalkeeper, we probably need a defender of some description. We have to do Zubimendi. We'll be putting money into the academy too. I would say if we end up with 2 of those 3 in the attacking areas, then I think we've done pretty well. And I would, be content with that. You cannot address everything in a single window. And also there's the Waneri factor to consider in this. And maybe there'll be reservations over bringing in a number 8 if they really, really believe that could be him next season.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
But the pressure maybe on this window is maybe greater than it has been for some time, I would say. The fan focus, the scrutiny, the expectations are perhaps higher than they have been for some time. And I think the inaction in January, as soon as the January window closed, the pressure was on for the summer.
Yeah, because that's a decision that you've made knowing very well that you need something. Because the manager said it more than once during the month of January that we need something, because Saka was injured and Jesus got injured, and then Havertz got injured not long after that, and Martinelli got injured not long after that, which you could maybe say is just unfortunate. But the decision, even if there was an attempt to do something which didn't work out, the decision not to do anything is one that, I think had an impact on our season, and that's kind of inarguable. But where we are, I think, this summer is, even if you are predisposed to understand that January isn't the best time to bring in attacking players in particular, I think, because the best attacking players just do not move in January. Even if you're predisposed to understand that, if the summer window doesn't meet your expectations or doesn't address those issues in a significant and meaningful way, then you're not going to get a lot of understanding.
Yeah, because the subtext of not doing something in January is we believe we can address this better in the summer.
Yes.
And so they better had, or people are going to be...
Or else.
Well, they're going to be cross, Andrew. And listen, you don't want to see me when I'm slightly cross. Because if you think... I hope... Yeah, you've never seen a finger wag quite like this. You've never heard tutting, like the kind of tutting I will unleash the day after deadline day if they haven't solved these problems.
Just sitting in the next press conference.
Yeah.
And you'll just be there going...
And Mikel go, that's that bald wanker from Union Chapel.
Fucking him again.
He was all smiley then. What's gone on?
It's what's not gone on, Mikel.
So I suppose, what was the question? Are we confident they can meet expectations?
I think your point about them saying it out loud suggests to me, like, they're not stupid either, right?
Yeah.
The message could easily be, we'll see what we can do this summer. We'll do our best in the transfer, whatever it is. I think they have basically told people what they want to do, and now it's up to them to go and do it. Which leads, I did like this, by the way. Celtical My Arsenal on the Discord said, we once pondered what do Edu do, but now I ask, what is Berta up to? Which I liked. So it's all about
to find out.
What is Berta up to? He better be up to good things.
To find out. Let's have this question from Dan. Dan123. Goodly, he says. Not sure what that means, but I enjoyed it. Do you think our depth issues are going to be resolved by going into the market? Or like me, have you any concerns that it's a bit of a lack of willingness to rotate? I love Arteta, but sometimes feel he's a bit best 11 all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Players who are maybe not perfect but not bad just don't feature. Zinchenko, Jorginho, Smith Rowe, even Tierney this season. Good players, but just not really used. If we buy new guys, will we actually rotate? Or will other players take over their spot on the bench while the same 11 or 12 play every game until they break?
Yeah, it's a great question, that. And I think it is an area where we need to see maybe a willingness on Mikel Arteta's part to trust more players and to use the depth. I think this season, maybe he's had some excuses or reasons because of the injuries that we have or have had, right? Mm-hmm. But maybe Kivior is a great example. We had some questions about Kivior as well, who I think was really, really good against Newcastle, by the way, and has been...
one brilliant interception, didn't he?
Yeah,
counter-attack.
Right in front of me. It was great. I think he's been good since he came in for Gabriel, and you might make a case, perhaps, we need to give Kivior a bit more playing time. It's so difficult because you have this amazing central defensive partnership, right? Saliba and Gabriel. So you feel secure and safe by playing them in every game. But I think what we've also seen is that if you give someone like Kivior playing time, he's not going to be Gabriel, but he can still be a guy who's very useful in terms of ensuring that the load on Gabriel for, let's say, I don't want to say more important games, isn't as high as it was, right? Saliba came off at halftime yesterday. Why? Felt something in his hamstring. Why? Because he's played all the minutes. Why? Because we haven't had the depth at centre half to give him the kind of rest that he needs. And again, it's linked to the injuries that we've had with Ben White, with Jurrien Timber. Jurrien Timber, by the way, the news today is he's having an operation on his ankle. Again, is it because he's been overplayed? I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of that. Maybe you know a bit more on that than I do. But it's like this vicious circle, isn't it? That the more you play guys, the more likely they are to get injured, and it becomes a vicious cycle or a vicious circle or whatever it is. So I do think it is a really, really important thing. That's not me getting emotional.
You're emotional like Mikel, I guess.
Yeah, it is important for Arteta to use his squad. Listen, if we're talking about how forthright and upfront they were about what they want to do in the transfer market, literally last week Arteta said, our squad is very short and we need more players. But that's only useful if you use those players. And I think he is going to have to take himself out of what is not a comfort zone per se, but like your default, if you're sitting there thinking about what is the best team I've got to go and beat this lot or that lot, you're kind of thinking of the first 11 or the same 11 for most of those games, right? But maybe too, there is something to the idea that if you can score more goals and you're a bit more potent in attack, you know, you can trust rotation at the back a bit more. I don't know. I think it is something that he is going to have to get a little bit better at.
I think so. I think it's a necessary evolution in him as a manager. I think it's, you know, one of the areas where Arteta can improve, and I think it is about trust, really. I think it's about, you know, being brave enough to kind of take that risk and to entrust those games and those minutes to players who might not be in your absolute perfect 11. Because it is a bit of a trend for him that he will kind of just lose faith in people across the course of a campaign. And guys who sort of started, I mean, I always think of Eddie Nketiah as like kind of the perfect encapsulation of this, where he kind of started the season, you know, sort of vying for first choice, and by the end it was like he just didn't get a kick, you know. And, and of course, individual players have responsibility in that. You know, Raheem Sterling, for example, if he'd performed with the opportunities he'd had, maybe he would have been granted more minutes later in the season. So I think there is a recruitment component to this, certainly. But I also think it's a step Mikel has to take. I think he did take a step this year in terms of entrusting the younger players. Like, I think that was something that he needed to do, and he, you know, because he had the right combination of brilliant talent and his own sort of maturity and development as a coach, we arrived at that point where he felt able to sort of blood them. But I think in terms of sort of having a bigger group, I think he could be better in that respect. And I'm a little bit not dubious, but sort of confused about his quotes about the size of the squad recently, because certainly in the past, and I think even last summer, I think he was, from my understanding, he was sort of relatively on board with quite a streamlined group, like, you know, a smaller but high quality group, I think was part of the plan and the intention. And then in the last few months, he has spoken very clearly and vociferously about having a small squad. So I'm intrigued sort of how that has quite come to pass and how that will be implemented. Do you know what I mean? Like how what size squad does he need or want? Like, he did put numbers on it once, didn't it? Yeah. Is it a pure numbers thing, or is it the balance of positions within the numbers that you already have? Could be, or because we laugh injuries, about right? Injuries, of course. But you know, we laugh about all the left backs. We've got like too many left backs. So is it a case that we have too few players in the squad, where like three of your options are at left back, and there's another guy playing his heart out at left back that you're not going to get in the team ahead of? Therefore, you know, where did Kieran Tierney come on yesterday on the left wing? You know, I think that's right. I think balance is a big part of it, for sure. Okay. We had a question about Kieran Tierney, so I want to find it here.
Okay. It comes from Third Doink, who is on the Discord. Don't know what Doinks 1 and 2 were like, but hopefully the third one's lucky. He said, how would you rate Kieran Tierney's time at Arsenal and the impact that he's had?
He's clearly very popular, and I mean that in every respect. You know, I think he got a great reception from the fans, didn't he? And I think he's really well liked within the club too. Really professional guy, and I'm always full of respect for players who, you know, have signed a pre-contract, are on their way out, but are still trusted by their manager. We've spoken about Mikel's trust issues, and he always felt, it seemed to me, perhaps not from the start, but certainly as a sub, that he could trust Kieran Tierney. And I think that tells you a lot about his character.
What can I follow up with another one? Because there was another one on Blue Sky. It comes from Ian Williams, who's at brocktoon.bsky.social. He says, I remember Gunnerblog saying when Tierney was signed that he feels like a really good player, but not an Arsenal player. I don't actually remember you saying that. I don't know if you remember it. But he says...
Vaguely.
He says, now that he's played his last home game, I'd love to revisit that statement. Why didn't he feel like an Arsenal player, and why obviously wasn't he?
I don't know. It feels a bit harsh, doesn't it, to say he wasn't an Arsenal player. I think stylistically, he had that kind of throwback aspect to his game that wasn't necessarily an obvious fit with, I don't know, I guess a modern Arsenal. I think that I've said this before, but I think sort of Kieran Tierney kind of tells the tactical story of Mikel Arteta's Arsenal, because like Arteta comes in and he sets up this thing, 5 lanes of attack. Tierney's actually one of those 5 lanes. Then we kind of evolve into this team where, you know, we can get into the wide areas, we can create those overloads, but we're really struggling centrally. We're slinging in cross after cross. It had that famous North London derby, 35, 36 crosses, most of them off the left boot of Kieran Tierney. And then the team began to evolve kind of away from that again, and we saw Zinchenko come in and the inversion from fullback, more of a possession-based game, more focus on building up through that part of the pitch. It became effectively a midfield role, and it went away from a Kieran Tierney type player, and now we're seeing that even more so with Miles Lewis-Skelly, right, who is actually, you know, like Zinchenko, a midfield player really by trade, stepping into that role. And every time they asked Tierney to invert and replicate that, for me, I know there were games where he did it and he did okay, but it always looked, in my eyes, like a square peg in a round hole. It's not who he is. It's not what he's best at. And, you know, he's off back to Celtic. And in a way, I'm happy for him because it's home for him and he loves it there and they love him and he'll win things. There's almost no doubt about that. But I also feel that he hasn't actually quite fulfilled his potential, in that I think he could have played at a higher level in a better league. But maybe I'm wrong about that. Celtic's a massive club, but I just feel like it feels quite soon for him to go back to Celtic.
Well, I think what's, you know, interesting, if you look back at when we signed Kieran Tierney, it was that summer of 2019, when we also brought in Nicolas Pepe, and he was maybe overshadowed a bit by that. But, you know, I thought he gave us something at left back that we had been missing for quite a while. Mm-hmm. There was a professionalism, a desire, a kind of on-pitch attitude that we did not see enough from Arsenal players in that period. Not just at left back, I mean across the board. And Tierney was, like you say, kind of old-fashioned, roll your sleeves up, you know, and just play to win with a real kind of desire. And we have to also remember he played quite a lot as a left-sided centre half.
Yeah.
You know, when we played in a back three,
out in the evolution of Arteta's Arsenal.
Yeah,
he did.
You know, so he did have a role to play. For me, I think the underlying issue or the underlying story, of course, is the injuries, and the injuries that have affected his ability to remain available to a manager. And I think that does have an impact on how they're viewed. Not that Mikel Arteta would ever have any doubts about Kieran Tierney's either ability or his professionalism. But I think when a player is in that sort of injury zone, you have to start thinking about alternatives, and it changes the dynamic a little bit. And I think he's been really unlucky with injuries. Even when he went to Real Sociedad on loan, he had 3-4 hamstring injuries. He probably would have left the summer before last. Remember where he got the big injury at the Euros, was it? Or Euros, yeah. He's just been plagued by injuries. And I think the other aspect of that is that if your career is stop, start with such consistency, I think it does have an impact on your development as a player. Because you're always chasing something. You're always trying to get match fit, and then you get match fit, and then you're trying to find a bit of form and a bit of rhythm, and then you get injured again, and you're in and you're out, and you're in and you're out. And I think it just has such a big impact on you as a player. I think as a professional, as a character, as somebody who Arsenal fans really connected with very, very quickly because of the kind of personality and attitude that he had. Like, we loved him because he had a fucking Tesco bag. He wasn't a fucking showman. He wasn't, the guy going around with the expensive this, that, and the other. He was just a guy who wanted to get on with it and get on the pitch and do his best for Arsenal. I think that's what people connected with straight away with Kieran Tierney. And I think it's why, while I sort of agree with you to an extent that at the age he is, he could play in the Premier League for another while. But the draw of Celtic and the draw of going back home and the draw of going back to the club that he loves, maybe for some prime years is a really, really strong one for him. And I think most Arsenal fans would wish him, all the best. I think he leaves with a lot of love and a lot of respect from Arsenal fans.
Yeah, and he said it was emotional for him yesterday. I think he was a little bit taken aback by quite how strong a reception he got and how positive it was.
Well, that's great.
And actually, you know what? Like, I don't have a lot of shirts with players' names on these days partly because I'm nearly 40 and I sort of think it's quite mad for me to have like the guy half my age wear his name on my back all the time. But strangely enough, I do have a Kieran Tierney Arsenal shirt because I think you're absolutely right. In that period when he arrived, 2019, it wasn't like it is now. It wasn't a time when we had where we really identified with the team. And I think he helped in that regard. And he was a player who people really could relate to. So I think he'll always be well remembered.
Yes,
for that.
For sure. Who knows, maybe a goal on the final day against Southampton.
That would be great.
He had a chance, to be fair. There was a breakaway. Oh my God, I was like, play it. Martinelli, get your head up and play the pass. Kieran Tierney racing into the back post. He would have had a tap in. But unfortunately, the ball, we couldn't get the ball across to him. But maybe on the final day against Southampton, he could get one. That would be nice. It wasn't
quite to be, yeah. Here's a question. I think I know what you're going to say, but it was a sort of... We get a lot of questions that are on similar themes, and this one was different enough that I thought, all right, we'll have a go. Kevin Campbell's Soup. Would you take a chance on Jamie Vardy for a year, in addition to whatever other striker we sign? He's still got pace, can still finish, and is still a prick.
Well, he's definitely a prick. Would I take a chance on Jamie Vardy? No. Absolutely not.
Yeah. 39 midway through next season.
No way. He didn't score from like January until last week or something. I know he's playing in like a really shit Leicester team because they're managed by Ruud van Nistelrooy, who is, how is he still in the job?
extraordinary, really.
It
I mean,
really
I guess
is
just
amazing.
hoping that he'll fare better in the Championship, but
yeah. No way. Come on, be serious. Be serious.
No way. I'm with you. I was pleased for Vardy to actually. Well, pleased. I liked the symmetry of him getting his 200th Leicester goal in his 500th and final appearance. You know, he actually said he doesn't want to play next weekend. Because
really? He just wants a round number?
He just wants a nice round number. He said weeks ago, that's my last game. It's going to be my 500th appearance. And I'm going to score the 200th goal. And fair play, did it. But I
don't trust the guy who says he doesn't want to play the final game for the club he's been at for like years and years and years. Who are they playing next week?
I don't know, actually. Maybe someone really good. And he's like,
fuck that. Can't be honest.
I don't want to be associated with that.
I don't want anything to do with it.
I know they're away. Let's have a look.
They're away at Bournemouth. A nice trip to the seaside. 501 is a good number.
You'll be on the beach already.
They named one of the best brands of jeans, didn't they? 501, Levi 501s.
Yes, that's right.
I don't know if they're the best. They're just famous.
I mean, there is another timeline where Jamie Vardy did play for Arsenal.
Yes, like we were quite close.
Arsene Wenger, really wanted him, had him at. I think it was at the Emirates Stadium rather than the training ground. Certainly had him in for a meeting. Jamie Vardy and his wife came down. And I think Arsenal thought they'd sort of done the deal. And then on his way back to Leicester, he called and said, don't fancy it. So there you go.
There you go. Absolute quitter. Want nothing to do with him.
I did think that's what you might say.
All right. I think we should probably finish up here, but there was one other. So this final question is to you. Okay. And Wise Marklar asks, Newcastle fans are seemingly fed up with Anthony Gordon. Would you take him at Arsenal, and how much do you think he'd cost?
I would take him at Arsenal. I think he's a really good player, actually. Yeah, apparently his form's not been great of late, and I don't watch them week in, week out. Isak apparently has not been particularly good of late, by the way. He's been struggling with carrying a couple of injury issues, and performances haven't been all there. Chatting to some of the Newcastle reporters yesterday, I'd still take him, mind. Don't worry about that. Gordon, I think, is a really good player. Quick, smart, scores goals, knows the league. Yeah. I think we could do a lot worse.
Probably be very expensive, though.
Yeah.
I just don't want to look at him. I do like him as a player, but I just do not want to look at him. I'm not. His face doesn't do it for me.
I know what you mean. I can't imagine buying a shirt with Anthony Gordon on the back of it.
No.
There's nothing sort of sexy about him.
No, I mean, it doesn't have to be, but
I mean that in the broad sense. I don't literally mean in the sort of, wanting to sleep with him way. I just mean that he's not a glamorous. He doesn't have that glamour feel, does he?
No,
he doesn't have
really.
The exoticism of some of the other potential names in the frame.
Yeah, exactly. We did mention this, by the way, at the live show, and you'll probably hear it on the audio and the live show and the YouTube when we get those released. But a word for Crystal Palace. Obviously, a big win. Eddie Nketiah has got another FA Cup winners medal. He was on the bench for 2020, wasn't he?
Quite possibly, but he got on, didn't he, against City?
Well, I didn't see it. I was too busy pacing around the green room of the Union Chapel while you were watching on your phone, and you kept going like, whoa, and I had to leave the room. Like I'm out of here.
You weren't happy with me going,
whoa. Oh, God. And then it was like 10 minutes of added time. No. What's happening here?
But, yeah, very pleased for Palace, actually. Really. I mean, it's a shame, obviously, we didn't win anything, but delighted that City were beaten in that final.
Yes, it's great. And well done to Crystal Palace. And Eddie Nketiah came on in the 2020 FA Cup final in the 82nd minute.
He's a double cup winner.
Double cup winner. Can you remember who he replaced?
Oba?
Nope.
Laka.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Quite impressed we got that long out of Lacazette, to be honest with you. must have been crawling around the pitch by that time.
Anyway, well done, Eddie. Well done to Crystal Palace, and ha to Manchester City. We saw some of their fans still around King's Cross on Sunday morning, so I did some pointing and laughing, as you do. As you do. Right, I'm going to get this podcast out to everybody. I think we will get the YouTube and the audio version of the live event at Union Chapel out for people tomorrow. You can stand by for that. We'll also, in as much as anybody has any appetite whatsoever to hear anything at all about the weekend's Premier League action, myself and Phil will have an episode of The 30 for you tomorrow as well over on Patreon, patreon.com/Arseblog. For now, though, folks, thank you so much as always for being here, and we will most definitely catch you on the next one.
Bye-bye.